Hello, this is Darren Pulsifer, Chief Solution Architect of Public Sector at Intel, and welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. On today's episode, Identity-Based Micro-segmentation, Part 2 of my interview with Elisity. What's the new approach here? Because And Dan, you and I have talked actually quite a bit about the impacts of network security on OT networks. Sure. But before we go down that rat hole, let's help people understand what other options do I have. And this is where I was impressed with your guys' approach, which you guys called identity network security, right? Or
identity-based micro-segmentation, least privilege access architectures. Yeah.
That's a big word. You guys got to shrink that down.
I like saying it.
What's the acronym for that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we haven't thought of an acronym. We should get one.
Yeah, you got to have a good acronym for that one. Identity-based.
IBMS.
Identity-based.
IBMS and
IBMS.
Lateral security. Yeah, something like LPA, least privilege access.
Well, it was cool when you guys explained it to me. So let's start at the basics because hey, this is pretty deep stuff, right? So, what's your biggest differentiator? What's your different approach to network security?
Yeah, I mean it's all about it's a couple of things, right? There's how it's delivered, how it's distributed across the network, and how this can be done efficiently, effectively, and provide rapid time to value. That's what we've been focused on. Is making this as simple but effective as possible and intuitive, so that really anybody in any segment of the environment or a segment of the industry can leverage this technology. Whether you're in the OT space, you're in the IoT space, the medical space with IoMT devices, it doesn't matter to us. These are all just important assets to the organization we need to secure. But I think we've been talking a lot about micro-segmentation. We keep using this term, so maybe we should talk about what that means to Elisity, and then that will help frame how we've approached the problem.
So what is micro-segmentation from your guys' perspective? Because I think I know what it means, but you guys blew that away with VLANs and firewalls. It's too complex to set up. So what do you guys mean by micro-segmentation?
Yeah, that's a great question, because micro-segmentation can mean a lot of different things to different people, the same way that word zero trust can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But I mean, micro-segmentation, for example, in the data center might mean the ability to separate layers of applications or workloads from each other. And it's something completely different in the OT space and something different in the IoT space. But micro-segmentation to Elisity is the capability to completely isolate any type of user, device, or application, no matter what type of network it's on, where it's placed in the network, whether it's managed or unmanaged. To us, it's the complete flexibility to isolate one asset from another without restrictions imposed by network architecture or network constructs like VLANs or VRFs, which are super rigid things that we get stuck on. So then the question that you're probably going to ask next is, how does Elisity set it up? How do we handle it, right? And that's a big part of the challenge that we've been solving for. Historically, micro-segmentation, no matter what platform you were trying to deploy it on or configure it on, required a lot of networking knowledge, tons of planning, most of the time hardware replacement or on-prem appliance instantiation, and this is stalling the time to value for customers. Like, they need a solution now, not 6 months from now when you get it up and running. Usually it takes months to years to get any value out of the traditional or a lot of the solutions that are out there that are being advertised to provide this functionality. And that doesn't fly. Elisity's found great success by shifting to a cloud native and cloud delivered micro-segmentation platform. And you've probably heard this before, right? SDN solutions like Meraki.
Yeah, SDN
like Meraki or Viptela. I'm originally from Viptela. Dan worked with Viptela and Cisco SD-WAN for a long time. We understand how powerful this cloud-delivered software-defined networking solution is for anything. For security in this case, it just scales really well. It's easy to manage, distributed dynamically. And so our entire control management and policy plane is fully cloud delivered. And the Elisity component that ties to your on-prem network is 100% software, and it's a lightweight software. So we've made this incredibly easy to deploy and configure. There's nothing you have to really change on-prem. It rides on top of your existing infrastructure. There's no hardware to change, to replace, and it makes it easy to get up and running, and you can write your policy and apply it within a week.
So this sounds a lot to me because I work in the container ecosystem quite a bit. So, and I already know the answer, but I know my listeners are going to think, oh, you guys created something like Calico, an overlay network.
Kind of.
But it's not that.
Go ahead, Dan. Yeah. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
I was gonna, in the sense of we delivered in sense that it's you call it a microservice, and to tap onto it, since we're going to talk a little OT today, is everything Dana just described is also on-prem. Is that we started in the cloud, but knowing that a lot of the listeners are going to be in the OT area, everything, we actually had a few customers that said, hey, we love what you're doing, but we need that behind L3.5. We need that behind the DMZ. We need to be able to cut off all access, and we've delivered that too as well. And so everything Dana mentioned is completely accurate. In addition to the fact on-prem or cloud, we could have both offerings.
Yeah, good point.
But from a function perspective, yeah, containerization is there. You could the easiest representation is a microservice in the sense of it's horizontally scalable. So you start small, you add 10,000 things to the network, and we just scale with you, and whether that be on-prem or in the cloud.
Yeah.
But the difference between what you guys do and what I've seen with overlay networks are still dealing with the data plane.
Yeah. Yes.
You guys don't. You guys only deal with the control plane.
I like to say the policy plane as well. I love that you brought this up because it's a massive differentiator and something we're really proud about, that we're able to apply the same level of granularity when it comes to network security without touching a single one of your packets. We're injected in the network in that we can see the metadata of identity of all the flows in the network, and then that information is sent up to our cloud engine, which can then figure out what policy needs to be applied and push that policy down to the edge of your network without actually touching your packet. We use your existing infrastructure, whether that's Catalyst 9000 series switches or Catalyst 3850 series switches, and another host of vendors that we're bringing to the market now that we're going to support. We're using that native functionality on that switch, so we don't have to inject our software in line.
So to me, because you're at the control plane and you're not dealing, so you're basically telling dynamically the network what to do based off of the identities that you find on the network when people have registered on this device or on this application running on this device, and I can specify who else I can talk to, all based off of attributes and identity. Is that
absolutely correct?
Yeah.
And before we talk about the identity piece of this, I had one more thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to simplifying and obfuscating complexity for the end user, because our number one goal is rapid time to value. So it's not just about the deployment of the solution. Yeah, we've made it so simple that you can deploy this and get it running within a week to 2 weeks, but it's the ongoing management and operations of this platform that you also need to be concerned about. So by abstracting and obfuscating the complexity, day two.
So day two.
By obfuscating, abstracting the complexity, and keeping it intuitive from the perspective of the end user, and making this distribution of policy completely automated across your entire network, there's little friction here long term. It's super simple to manage long term as well.
Yeah, to tack onto that, if I'm a plan operator, if I'm an X operator, I'm doing something, and maybe I have a little bit of network background because I need it to be useful, but I'm not an IE. I might not be an NA, from that perspective. We've built this solution so that you can look at our policy engine and say, hey, this needs to talk to that, and you can interpret and completely understand what's happening. You don't need to know what VLANs are, VRFs. I could flip your original question and say, what aren't we? Yeah. We're not a switch management tool in the sense of we're not trying to deploy VLANs, or we're not trying to deploy VRFs and port configuration, because nothing we do has anything to do with any of that. We don't care what port you're coming in or leaving. We don't care what VLAN you're on or what VRF or what the routing looks like. It's completely abstracted away from us. And the abstracted word's a dangerous word a lot of the time, but with our solution, it's completely indifferent. You could have one good example. You could put everybody in a /8, and we're going to work perfectly fine. You could put everybody into their own individual VLAN, and everybody gets a VRF, and you have a really big BGP config there. And that would work perfectly fine as well because of how we work with the control plane.
Topology independent. Yeah, so topology independent.
That's pretty
key.
impressive.
That's key because now it makes us a universal solution for any industry, any customer without any friction. They don't have to go and redesign their network, add new VLANs, re-IP, none of that. We'll just layer right on top.
Okay, so let's talk some practicality. So my listeners can understand, because we're going to get really geeky here. We already started getting geeky. /8 / Come on, Dan. You're a CNA. I could tell you're a network engineer, a certified network. I know what that means only because I had beat over my head by one of our internal network engineers. But practically speaking, what you guys are saying is I can say I've got a certain device by identity, and I can pin it to only talk to other
users
devices.
Or applications.
And you can do that
devices,
directly through
users,
your
or
policies.
applications. Yeah,
or applications.
I look at this like a I
users
like
too.
A triangle. It's just like trifecta, right? So users, devices, applications, and then within that triangle, you have all these lines of things talking to each other. There, we can secure every single channel between user, device, and application with granularity within that triangle. That's the visualization.
All right. So effectively what you could do, and you're doing this at the network control layer.
At the edge.
Right. So that traffic won't even get
the
there.
Edge. Exactly.
It won't be allowed
edge of the
to
network.
go
So
there,
the moment
correct?
the traffic hits that first edge switch, that ingress point, it's being secured. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. It's the most efficient way to apply security right at the edge.
Yeah. It really sounds to me a lot like the original controls they put in Unix when Unix was running on just one machine, right? Where, hey, I've got identity. I'm only allowed access to certain programs, certain data, and certain directories, right? And a lot of times maybe even certain amount of processing power. I had quotas and also, but you guys have done this at the network, which says that when I come in my identity, I come in as Darren, you guys could really pin me to Darren gets to run 3 applications on these 3 machines, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's
Darren, do you know why we have to do it at the network layer and not at the application layer? It's because not all these, okay, first of all, we have users that might be on Macs and laptops and things like that you can put a user agent. But what about all the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of devices in your network that you can't put an agent on, that you can't modify? They have embedded operating systems, cameras, badge readers, people.
Oh, especially OT. The OT side.
Yeah, it can't happen at the device itself. It's got to be right where it comes into the network.
I love your guys' approach, because what you did was you destroyed, 4 layers of the network stack.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
you did. Yeah. You said, what you're saying is they're still important, but I'm going to secure it not at the top of the stack. I'm going to secure it down low. And you guys, you're doing it at level 2, right?
There's still a use and there's still a requirement for firewalls at the layer 3 boundary or at the edge of the network. That's always going to be there. But there's a better way, a more efficient way to do it at the edge of the network for that lateral east-west within VLANs or cross VLANs or cross BRFs, and we can also do the north-south piece of it. But yeah, we have really made some of these legacy mechanisms to be really deprecated at this point.
Let's dig into OT. All right, because this is a big, huge thing I'm dealing with right now with a lot of my customers. I am very worried about OT security, because OT security has an impact on functional safety and safety of the real world. So I know, Dan, this is a sweet spot for you too. So help me understand how I can leverage your guys' approach and your guys' solution stack in an OT network, because there's a lot of caution around OT. So how does this help me even more in the OT side?
So the 10-second, the classic thing you hear kind of almost every time people talk about IT versus OT is that the fundamental difference of what we're trying to accomplish. If I'm thinking IT, I'm thinking security, I'm thinking integrity, confidentiality, I'm thinking I want to protect what I have. Availability is there too, and we've kind of solved that in different ways, but the focus...
Yeah, we just spin up a new instance. If we're intruded on, we quarantine, spin up a new instance.
It's very easy to rinse and replace. It's very easy to just blow things away like it's not a big deal. With OT, the equation's flipped, where the cornerstone of OT is safety. Now, we need availability, we need integrity, we need our things to continue to function, but it's safety not just for people, but safety for the process, because the process could represent critical infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so it's a completely different mindset. So, and a good comparison is something in IT might exist for 6 months or a year. Something in OT might exist for 20 years, in the sense of a process control network.
Yeah, but I have run into that where I have a 50-year-old controller controlling lights at the airport.
I don't doubt it,
and they're not going to replace it.
And they're probably doing kind of a fail till maintenance thinking, in the sense of that's a very common OT thing, in the sense of, hey, I'm just going to, and it's a very valid design where you've got people like, hey, every 10 years I'll maintain it or something like that, or I'll patch it every couple of years. And then you've got other ones that go even to the extreme. I will not touch that environment until something bad happens. So it's completely hands off until some type of failure event, and that's on purpose often enough, as opposed to not. And so the intention there is just totally different end outcomes they're looking for. And so on the OT side, the idea would be essentially to make sure that safety, which equates to restricting connectivity, restricting who can touch what through users we talked a second ago, and something as simple as, to bring back the VLAN example, just because you're in the VLAN doesn't mean an RTU and another RTU or a sensor or some HMI or a DCS that might be one switch over doesn't mean they have to talk to each other. There may be no valid business case for them to be talking. And the crux of the legacy design is that, well, I put them on the same VLAN. There's no way for me to stop that unless I go really far into the toolbox and start doing VACLs or some goofy stuff like that, which is just...
Exactly.
But then it becomes rigid and hard to manage.
Who the heck understands how it's configured?
Right. So with this, we talked a little bit about also... my concern is identity. You showed me that I can actually group things together or put attributes on assets and set up policies based off of those attributes as well, or those groups. So what that means, instead of saying I have to go through every single device and say these devices can talk to this controller, this aggregation switch, whatever the case may be, or aggregation data point, I can say, hey, all these devices are sensors. They can all talk to this aggregation data that's aggregating all data sensor, but no one else can talk to it. So instead of having to go item by item and say, this can talk to only this, I can group things together and have policies based off that.
We think people are going to do that more often than not, in the sense... The idea of us walking into a refinery or into manufacturing or into some type of transit authority or something like that and say, hey, let's go down to the bone and let's make everything very exact. That's not real world. And so we've designed our solution to be incredibly crawl, walk, run. Meaning that, hey, I just want to group all my processes and they can only communicate north-south, no more east-west. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as that. Or, hey, my line managers, they can communicate to the 6 or 7 types of things that they should. Huge broad brush here. And then my actual operators who actually, SSH or terminal into devices and actually modify PLCs live, well, they can hit the PLCs. They can hit the RTUs, but nobody else can. Something as simple as that, where you might have 2 or 3 policies for an entire plant, but you just took your attack surface from 65,000 potential attack, ports, for example, down to 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And so huge, vastly quickly.
Yeah.
So this really turns the OT network on its ear, because right now what people do is they air gap their OT networks
as they go down the back.
Yep. As they go down, and then they say, that's how I'm protecting it. So they don't even use VLANs. They use LANs. And they say, no traffic can leave this little thing. But with this stuff, you can control the east-west traffic and the north-south independent of each other, and be very explicit and not worry about the topology of the network itself, which I think is valuable, because how many times I've even seen this on naval ships where, hey, a captain needs some information from one network to the other that are air gapped, and guess what happens? They put a jumper cable between the two switches.
Yeah, there goes security out the window. That's that user. Can't trust them.
Security out the window. So. Right, and then the one sailor that did that, gets sick, or something happens where and no one knows that it's happened, and now you're running unsecure. With this, I have visibility, I have control, and I love the rapid time to value and intuitive, effective approach.
Thank you. Yeah, we think so as well. What you guys just described was the whole concept behind identity-based security. And so what that means to us at Elisity is about leveraging dynamically learned and updated attributes of all the assets in your network, and using that as policy match criteria, using those attributes that we dynamically learn and inventory as part of your policy match criteria. So as Dan said, you can make super granular policies saying, I want all Siemens PLCs to do this or that, or have access to this or that, and I want all of these other types of humidity sensors to do something else and have access to something else, based off of the model name, the vendor, the device behavior, whatever it might be, but not based off these rigid constructs like IP addresses and VLANs that don't tell us anything and are only valid for like an assigned for a point of time, right?
Yeah.
This means that this policy can dynamically update and change if the asset has also changed. So it allows us to bring continuous verification into this environment as well.
I see another great use case for this. This happens a lot in OT networks. I have a vendor that has to do an update on my device. Mm-hmm. So what do? I let them into my network for a short period of time. Yep. And guess what? They have access to my whole network.
Yeah, once you're in, you're in.
Once you're in, you're in. With this, I can say, I'm giving it to you for 12 hours.
Exactly.
Access to this device. And that's it. That's all you get access to.
Yeah.
You can even further say, I'm giving you it for 12 hours. Here's the port combination you can communicate on. Here's the three things you're allowed to touch. And at the end of the 12 hours, the contractor example is just, there's so many numerous examples there. Mm-hmm. But to put it simply, is that they walk into the door and they have, whatever, depending on where you throw them, which you often have to throw them close to the bottom, because that's where their stuff is sitting. They could have access to 1,000 things when they might only need access to 2. Yep. And so it's just a different game when you can restrict them to those 2 things and to 3 ports and say, here's the 2 touch points you can have and nothing more.
All right. So if my listeners want to find out more, they just go to Elisity.com. Is that where they start?
Yep.
Reach out to you guys. How do we get them in information?
Yeah, we have a ton of resources on our website, Elisity.com, and if you click at the top, there's a resources button. We have videos and white papers, and I'm on the technical marketing side, so you can go and read all my documents and really understand how the solution works and how it would be applied in your network, and you'll see how quickly you could get this up and running and seeing that value within a week.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And Dan, I know we're going to have more conversation about the OT side.
Gotcha,
I'm working on something right now called Hardened OT Managed Security, of which I've already put you guys in the architecture for my identity-based security at the network side. So I love your guys' approach. I think it's pretty clever and simple, which to me, those are the best solutions.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and do something wonderful.